Welcome everyone to Agile Talks by Agile Gurus. I'm your host Rahul Kataria. Today we're going to talk about SAFe 5.0 and digital business transformation. So we're going to talk about some deltas between the different, competencies between 4.6 and 5.0. Um, and today we have Daniel Dina. He's one of our coach in Agile Gurus for more than a year now. And he is also our trainer and a mentor in London, United Kingdoms. So welcome, Daniel. Um,
Hey, hi everyone. Hi, Rahul.
thank you
Lovely.
for
Good to be
joining.
back. Yeah,
Love it. All right.
definitely.
So Daniel, we're gonna keep the same flow that we used to have. We're gonna go down the list of questions that we have
Yeah.
on this topic, and
Mm.
then if people have any questions during the webinar, feel free to put in the chat. We'll look at it during the webinar and try to answer as much as we can. Daniel, for today, what is digital business transformation, and how does SAFe align with it?
Well, thank you, Rahul. That's a really interesting question. I think there's a lot of buzzwords out there in the market where people talk about DBT, digital business transformation, agile transformation, and then there's also what you call IT modernization. Digital business transformation simply is that, when you're actually looking at, transforming an organization or a business or an enterprise into a current digital business enterprise. So what capabilities, what solutions, what architecture, what infrastructure do you have in place, and also overall, how as an organization are you looking at, becoming one of the thought leaders and, forefronts or in this digital era. So if we think about the revolution of IT, we're right now in a new wave. Right now, I'm thinking right now digital business transformation is going to be now looking at what does IT and what do organizations look like post-COVID era. How do we see, digital tools, IT tools, infrastructure, and also the workplace, being transformed, where it enables, the collaboration, the alignment, the vision, but fundamentally, where it also brings customer centricity as the core focus in terms of delivering what delights the customer, how we delight the customer, and why we delight the customer. But fundamentally, also looking at, seeing how we transform and what that journey looks like. And oftentimes it's challenging. COVID is a classic example where a lot of organizations had legacy architecture, legacy IT systems, old, redundant, systems that should have been decommissioned, and all of them are now looking to pivot into this new era of IT modernization, whether it's the banking sector. You could see public sectors crashing. You could also see a lot of organizations, not being able to cope with the demand. Even Zoom crashed a few days ago. And that's just because they don't have a scalable architecture and a scalable infrastructure that allows them to continually transform where there's a, ever demanding, need for the services.
Um, that Zoom crashing thing. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I've seen so many projects in my lifetime, also projects failing, here in the UK, also in the US. We spoke about, the pay protection loan, the CARE Act. You've got, organizations not being able to scale out, to demand, what is needed, so you're looking at, modernizing the overall architecture, but also modernizing the workplace. And in order to do that, how do you transform? And what does digital mean? Digital simply just looks at, your first display of anything right now is your mobile device. People no longer really advertise on TV. It's now on your mobile device. Everybody has an iPhone, an iPad, your Android phone, or something else. And so right now, when you're looking to engage your customers and you're looking to engage, the opportunities within an organization, what does digital mean? How do we in the end transform? How do we as a business, come together? Because before, a lot of people used to look at, transformation being just a technological development practice. But right now, development and every organization and every business is an IT focused business, is an IT enterprise. It's a business that is looking to attract customers, maintain customers, but sustain also their growth in the industry.
Right. Yep. All right. So going deep into our SAFe 5.0,
Yeah.
what are the SAFe competencies?
So SAFe 5.0 is a shift from 4.6. SAFe has basically been growing over the couple of years. We're now like 10 years. SAFe actually launched 2011. And it's grown massively. Now, I don't know if you all saw the latest article where there's a company that's just been pivoted to SAFe by NASA. So NASA is actually going SAFe, which is really exciting. I saw that on the SAFe website today. Fantastic that they're going to be launching rockets. But yeah, one of the key things you'd be looking at in the core competencies of 5.0 is a shift from the 4.6 version where there were 5 core competencies. In 5.0 they've introduced 2 new competencies, and that's basically things around agile product delivery, and then also looking at organizational agility. And one of the key things that you're looking at is, what does organizational agility look like for a business and an enterprise? They've introduced a few other competencies such as, continuous learning culture. How do we, in the end, as an organization, continually learning? Because remember, you're going to have those fast feedback loops, and those fast feedback loops are what allows us to stay ahead of the game, stay competitive, and at the same time, fail fast, fail forward, but also recover quickly, knowing exactly how we can launch new products by the learning cycles. So it's going to be a mindset shift where a lot of organizations have been so used to either the 4.5 framework or the 4.6, and now you've come out with a 5.0. And I'm going to tell you that post COVID, there's likely going to be changes. It's a framework, and it's a living framework. That's the beauty of SAFe. It's a living framework, which means that it continues to grow, it continues to be adaptable, but it's also backward compatible, which means that people can easily go back to the old frame, the older versions of the framework. In the new Delta, you basically have 2 key competencies that are in 5.0. But fundamentally, you also still look at all the other competencies that are evolving. Things like team and technical agility. You're looking at enterprise solution delivery. You're looking at lean portfolio management, which was introduced at the latter part of last year. But we're still 6 months into 5.0. A lot of people are confused. How do you apply SAFe? How do you apply it? And I always tell people, when you're looking at implementing SAFe, think about it first of all from a configuration level, and then now think about it as to what competencies do we have in an organization? What are the quick wins? How do we in the end actually map the key configurations, competencies, as well as the dimensions within those competencies? And then how do we now look at the core cultures within the organization? Because oftentimes you always have people telling you agile projects have gone bad or have gone wrong, and you want to move people from that mentality of saying every agile project fails. Agile projects fail simply because of a lack of planning and a lack of understanding exactly what it means to be agile and how it means to be agile. And what we need to do is shift that mindset and shift the organization and the culture, but fundamentally, continually drive, the practice and the best practice and the improvement around, what it means in terms of scaling agile. Should you be doing SAFe if you only have 50 people in your organization? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Would you be looking at scaling SAFe if you're looking at in the next 3 years, growing to 100 to 200 people with, increasing your market share and your revenue, then maybe yes. So I had a client today basically, and they had, a vision of, attaining over £1 billion within the next 4-5 years. Now that is enterprise, that is scaling.
Right.
How do they want to do that? They're not sure. They're very waterfall. What would be the key thing to do? Well, let's look at the value streams. Let's look at the opportunities. Let's identify the waste, and let's identify also the cultures, because fundamentally, there are people in the organization who've been there for donkey years, and they need to now move into a new way of working, which is shifting from a waterfall, project management style of things into understanding lean agile leadership, and then actually making sure that the transformation is exciting rather than mandatory.
That's right.
And I always call it organic scaling.
That's very interesting, and great comment by Marcella, I guess, in our group chat from a live audience. My latest challenge is to change the mindset from delivering software to delivering value. This is great. This is really good. Key point. All right. So Daniel, next question we have is, what is the first SAFe competency to start with, and why is it so important? And so I guess there's another addition to this question. why or what other safe competencies are recommended for an initial pivot of agile transformation?
So if we take a step back in looking at a safe implementation, I mean, a lot of people tend to either become SPCs or they have a certification in leading safe, or they want to in the end go into a qualification or certification. You always start with leadership. You lead by example, and leadership is basically, all about you being able to understand the why. Why are we transforming? What is in it for us as a business? What is in it for us as an organization? What is in it for us as an enterprise? Fundamentally, also, you begin to now start thinking about what are the systemic changes and cultures that we need to now start, addressing. Are there any constraints, stopping us from actually moving, to the next level? You begin to also look at, the roadmap. So SAFE has a beautiful tool which is called the SAFE implementation roadmap. And the implementation roadmap is a very easy guide that actually allows you to understand where to start. You start from understanding that you have an urgent burning platform. You either change, adapt, or die. And so in order to do that, you now go into training, coaching, and guiding the executive teams to understand the why, then actually making them appreciate the how, and then fundamentally making them understand, the what needs to happen. And that's basically how I put it. So you start with lean agile leadership, so leading safe. And then fundamentally, you also have to have right people with, the right attitudes and the cultures, around coaching, around organizing, subject matter experts, stakeholders, and all the key people who are kind of key decision makers. If you think about, how we speak about, long-term and short-term decisions, you've got to have tactical wins, but you also would have strategic wins. Tactically, what are we doing right now? What can we change? What can we do as a proof of concept or as a pivot? If you think about the PI planning as a 10-week window or a 12-week window in which we'll do a proof of concept and launch one agile release train, and then in the end, now use that as another proof of concept to validate what we've learned and how we've built products and features and new solutions, we can now begin to extend that. So fundamentally, also, you'd be looking at role-based trainings. Oftentimes, people put the cart before the horse. What you want to do is basically, putting the horse before the cart. So making sure you follow the implementation roadmap and then guide people on understanding the how, the why, and then the when.
And the additional, I guess, part to that question: are there any other, what other safe competencies are recommended for the initial pivot?
So for the initial pivot, what you'd be looking at also would be things around, so we always talk about starting with essential safe, so essential safe, would be now looking at, do we have the teams in place? Are we looking at, fundamentally building those key competencies around having a clear understanding of what epics are going to be in place. Now, oftentimes I've seen people arguing, oh, well, we shouldn't be having epics, if we're going to be doing essential safe because it's at just the program and the team level. But the reality is, if you think about an agile dream, an agile release train being the value stream that has been identified of both operational and, development of value streams, merging together, coming together, aligning together, and then overall transforming the way an organization works and maps to an epic, which is funded, a lean portfolio epic. You'd need to also have some form of capability around on identifying the epics, identifying the value streams, but fundamentally, so there's an aspect or element of lean portfolio management that needs to take place. There's other aspects, of agile product delivery, so what are we building? How are we building it? Why are we building it? And then you'd begin to look at other sides of team and technical agility. What are the key resources we have in place? Are there technical skills? Is our workforce, is our organization, are the teams right now shaped, in terms of skills, or are they basically T-shaped or are they E-shaped? What are we looking to improve? Can we do some self-selection exercises where in the end we would actually have product owners and product managers actually share the vision, and then get people to naturally gravitate towards what they want to work, because it becomes much more powerful when you can get teams to self-select and then know exactly what they want to work on in an agile transformation. But then again, you now begin to now look at, do we have a roadmap and a plan in place on how to train people? So continuous learning, is going to be part
Yeah.
of those core things that you're looking at. So those are the kind of top 4 competencies. So think about essential safe, bottled, or I'll say capped with lean portfolio management. Those are the key competencies. Don't focus right now on enterprise solutions safe if you're not doing capabilities. But if your organization is so large where you have dependencies on third party vendor supplier management and other things, then you may want to bring in things such as enterprise solution delivery, because that actually allows you to understand, well, how are we going to be now working with the third party vendors, especially in government organizations, agencies, agile contracts, what does that look like? Some organizations will still be working in a very waterfall model. How do you basically have waterfall and agile working together? We've also got some organizations who have got IT infrastructure in hardware where they cannot actually move into agile just rapidly. So how do you basically bring them together? And then also, what does organizational agility look like? Who are the key sponsors? Who are the key people? Do they understand there's a no blame culture? Do they understand that we're all in this together and we're all working towards enterprise delivery, enterprise transformation with a common goal and vision to get there? I always talk about, people see Usain Bolt or Mo Farah as a champion in the Olympic. They only shine once every 4 years. But the reality is they practice, they prepare.
That's
So
right.
think about it, coming together. What does it mean for us to now be that champion in the world in terms of our solutions, our innovations, and our ideas? And how do we make it exciting such that everyone wants to be on the same boat and sail towards the same destination and not
Yeah.
want to get off?
So just lead by example and be the
Lead by
leader.
example.
Love it. All right, that's very insightful. Thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome.
Next question: how do you measure? And this is a great question. How do you measure the impact and effectiveness of the SAFE competencies in digital business transformation?
So there are a couple of ways. Within SAFE, they've got the metrics that are already there. I would say some organizations don't know how to use them. I've seen pushback also from teams where if you're doing a team self-assessment, some teams have come back saying, well, you don't even know our infrastructure, you don't know our organization. So a quick way to measure, first of all, is check out from an agile delivery and from a portfolio perspective, are we doing the same things that we're doing? So think about our scrum meetings, essential scrum. Let's just even start with the basics. We're setting up agile teams, whether we call them tribes, squads, or whatever. I've seen people call them agile release fleets. How do we bring them together, and how do we measure that we're actually getting value for what we're delivering? What does our definition of done look like? What does our definition of preparedness look like already, as some organizations tend to have it? And oftentimes I try to focus more on the definition of done, at the team level, at the program level, and then also at a portfolio level, and then measure over the next 10 to 12 weeks. So if we think about SAFE has a framework of every 10 weeks you have a PI planning, but in a calendar we have 52 weeks in a year. 4 weeks out of those 52 we don't really use because everyone goes on holiday. So we have 48 weeks technically to work with planning. And then we now break that into every quarter. So technically we can say, what's our Q1, Q2, Q3 objective? Let's map those to our PI1, PI2, PI3, PI4. How do we actually measure progress and success? Let's look at exactly what we decided to do as a proof of concept, PI1, and then see a pilot, and then now come back and see what were the lessons learned, what retrospectives, because remember you have your inspect and adapt, you have your problem solving workshop, you also have everyone coming together, whether you're using the Fishkawa analysis, the fishbone analysis, or whatever you're using. But how do we measure progress? There will be KPIs that are driven from a business perspective, or OKRs, but from a team perspective also. One question I always ask the Scrum Masters is, how do you know the teams trust you? One of the key things you would see is that there would have been more trust, or there would have been trust broken.
That's right.
So the trust broken is systemic across the organization because people are scared of change. But when trust comes together and people understand and appreciate exactly what you're transforming and how you're transforming and how you're working, new ways of working, and then also making sure you have team working agreements, you can now start self-assessing, on a scale of 1 to 5, do we think the teams are working better? on a scale of 1 to 5, the quality of our features actually better? On a scale of 1 to 5, do we actually see that, we're actually able to release quickly? We're able to integrate? Do we have more automation in place? Have we reduced our tech debt? Have we now looked at, other things such as refactoring? Are we making capacity and allocation in terms for the teams to actually do innovation and planning? Because it's not all about firefighting and putting out fires at the very last
Absolutely.
end. How do we bring those things, so as an organization, what is our culture right now? Are we now basically now saying that people are happier working because they also have time to do other things such as innovate, link coffees, show and tell? Where are we basically now seeing the quick wins? And if you think about a quick retrospective, what is it we're doing right now that we can continue doing and improving that we're happy about? What are we not doing? And then, okay, what are we puzzled or confused about that we need to actually focus on? And do this across the teams, the program, the portfolio, and the overall enterprise, and then begin to measure. And then you also have, measure and grow there. So some people tend to look so theoretical as safe, but the reality is that these things can be very, very simple. When you have good scrum masters, find out from the scrum masters or the product owners, are you even talking to each other?
That's right.
you know
Yeah.
are the scrum masters even working towards helping the RT in the next PI planning? Are the RTs working right now with the overall business and product managers and the business owners to understand exactly, well, how are we funding the next agile release train? This train is looking like it's maturing now. What are we doing next? So what does that alignment and collaboration and cooperation look like? And then also, are you decentralizing some of those decisions? When you force organizations to pivot into either new tools or something else, are we making the right decision? Because that in itself may introduce new waste.
That's right.
So can we actually now see, and then also, are we giving people the tools and the training and the education they need to continue scaling? And so measure everything, because you can actually see tangible improvements. And then don't always try to run if you haven't learned how to walk, and don't try to walk if you haven't learned how to crawl. So start little by little and then
That's
grow.
right. Yeah. And sorry, I'm going on a little bit of tangent here, Daniel. You touched the nerve, I guess. One of the points you mentioned, you asked the scrum masters, or the
Mm,
team, that do you have trust with the scrum master, or is it trust
yeah.
broken, right? And in the past, I've seen so many examples like that where teams might love you as a scrum master. So again, guys, if you're listening to this, you might chime in the chat too. If you have scrum masters in your team, and like if you're at leadership position, your team might come back and say they love their scrum master, but there could be a good chance that they love the scrum master because the scrum master is acting as an admin for them and doing everything for them, so the team just loves them. So
Exactly.
there's that fine line between that too, so keep in mind.
And that is so true. Fundamentally, what you are always going to look at is, we as an organization, are we delighting our customers? And then you ask, who are our customers? You've got internal and external. All right, what's the role of the scrum master? To coach the teams. What's the role of the product owner? To drive the teams into new innovations to delight the customers. You have HR teams internally, so you're building a new HR system as an example. Your customer is going to be the people who are using the HR tool. You've got a company that is actually in retail or in supply and demand. They're looking at warehouse management, ERP, and cloud solutions. Their customers would also be the people who they're serving. You've got sales modules, you've got financial modules, and all of that. But from a scrum master perspective, they're people in the end who have built what you call packs and gangs within office spaces. And that is good in itself, because in the end, what you want to do is build tribes of innovators. But then what you also want to do is break that mentality, oh, it's us against them, or these are the other people. No, we're all in this together. We're fighting
That's
a
right.
common cause, we're fighting a common vision, and we're looking that we are basically looking at identifying what the roles, the responsibilities of everyone is collectively, and then also understanding exactly how we come together. Now, one of the things that you just mentioned, which is very dear to my heart, because I used to be a scrum master, I am still a scrum master, and I'll forever be a scrum master, is the fact that people think scrum masters are actual servants, and some people think scrum masters are there they literally take the word servant leader and then just mean, well, you're meant to be my servants, So, I want to correct that right now. Scrum Masters are servant leaders. They lead in coaching and lead from behind. They are not there
Yes.
to serve, just or serve just the team. They're there to actually empower and help the team understand and become that voice, but remove impediments and also block them from, external influences. So one of the key things where you have people saying the Scrum Master should be able to improve the backlog to be, what is the product owner doing? So one of the key things I always tell people is the culture. Go back to the culture.
Yeah.
Do a roles and responsibility mapping. Find out what the competencies of each role and responsibility are, and then bring them all together and then educate people. You are a Scrum Master, you are your team member, you are a product owner. How do we work together? And then
That's right.
come up with team norms, which we spoke about in the last couple of episodes of our webinar. Team norms, the way we're going to work together, the way we're going to agree together, and the way we're going to hit this target, hit these goals, and hit this vision together.
That's right. All right, Daniel, one last question we're going to do today,
Yeah.
and then the rest we're going to just continue in our next episode or part two.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a choice, two questions. One question that we had before the webinar started is who and what roles are important or aligned to the SAFe competencies? And the next question we just got today in our chat from live audience by Rahul is what's the delta between 4.6 and 5.0? So I'm not sure if we were going to cover that anyway. So I'll give you a choice.
Yeah, so I think we wouldn't have the time, but I think very early, let's put it this way. Depends on what configuration you're looking at. I'll take the first question and then we'll now look at the deltas, in the next part. If we're thinking about the SAFe configurations where we have full SAFe, we have portfolio SAFe, we have essential SAFe, large solution SAFe, we begin to look at the roles at each level because each of those roles map to a specific competency and also the specific level of your configuration. So you're looking at the configurations, the competencies, and the dimensions under those competencies to actually bring everyone into understanding. So where it comes to Scrum Master and the product owner, those roles are actually in essential SAFe. The competencies you're looking at are first of all core, lean, agile leadership. You'd be looking at things around team and technical agility. You'd be looking at continuous learning culture, and you'd be looking at a few other things such as agile product delivery. You'd also have the RTE, you'd also have the product managers. Those are the essential level. When you're looking at the portfolio level, the kind of roles you'll be looking at will be your enterprise architect. You'd be looking at business owners. You'd be looking at other stakeholders in that level of configuration at the portfolio level. But then also I then find that the competency at that level is lean portfolio management. But also you could begin to now look at a few other competencies that are core to that, and such as leading SAFe, SPCs, the skill program consultants. Those are people who in the end are able to help you implement, drive the solution, and drive the understanding. And let's put it this way: SAFe is a framework. It's a framework that is meant to be applied in the context of how you see the organization growing and adapting it. So if you're looking at your competencies, you're also thinking about, we as an organization, where are we right now? Are we working with third-party suppliers? Do we actually have them on board to go in SAFe? Should we be thinking about large solution SAFe, if we have more than one arts, multiple arts, and then also how we basically mapping those features or capabilities into, features, and epics into capabilities and features and the enablers, and how we fundamentally working together as a business and as an organization in what we consider IT modernization or digital business transformation, which in most words also agile transformation. So how do we actually do that, and what are the pain points? One of the key things you'd be looking at is educate. Not talking about theoretical training, but practical things. How do we work together as a team?
Right. In the next part, we are going to talk about the deltas between 4.6 and 5.0, right?
Yes, and I would also delve into, I just saw a question that somebody asked, also into mapping roles and responsibilities with good examples. We will be looking at that also. So we'll just merge both of those in the next part.
Perfect. All right. So I think that brings us to end of our podcast today. Daniel, do you have any closing remarks? And guys, if you have any last minute quick question, feel free to put it here and we'll just get to that. But Daniel, closing remarks?
I just want to say, you know what, wherever you are, whatever your roles are, always remember there are two things. There's a title and there's a role. The role is the hat you're wearing. Make your safe transformation such that it's exciting, everyone understands it, but fundamentally, don't just think about the theory, think about the practicality. Always start with the why and then go into the how, and then fundamentally the what and the when. Somebody just puts a statement there, Marcel, and also pick your battles. Very true.
Absolutely. And I see a lot of people in the comments saying, talking about Scrum Masters and support Scrum Masters. I have been in that role, guys. You're serious. Like, there were times when I felt I had no support. Team expected something else from me and they wanted me to do a lot of admin work. My manager expected something else. The train did not know what Scrum Masters are supposed to do. So if you have Scrum Masters, please, please, please support them as much as you can so that they can feel that they can talk to someone.
Culture matters a lot. And oftentimes leaders tend to always just push things. Even recruiters, I see them, Agile delivery manager, project manager, Scrum Master, Agile project manager. They don't really know what the role is, so they just put everything together in one, And my mom is a really good cook. Whenever she cooks and she's telling me, well, this is how you cook your soup. And I'm like, okay, if you try to mix all the ingredients, you'd likely throw up, so so that's actually why Agile, projects tend to end up being bad, because everyone is overlapping. Too many cooks spoil the broth. So what you want to do is step back and make it, where everybody knows what role they're playing and how many parts. No two batteries make a car. So make sure that, your safe transformation actually has the right mapping of roles and responsibilities and an understanding of, where each person actually plays a vital role in transformation.
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you again. And thank you everyone for being a good participant here and trying to just get plugged in with all the Agile things we talk about here and all your questions. Alicia, I would get back to you with your ask that we have. And guys, we are going to continue this discussion. We have a lot of other questions that were sent to us. So next Tuesday, we'll be talking about the same thing and more questions. So be plugged in. And if you don't get an email from us, feel free to email me at rk@myagilegurus.com. If you have more topics that you want to suggest, or if you want to be a guest speaker, definitely try to just contact me on rk@myagilegurus.com. And thank you, Daniel, again for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm sending you guys greetings from London. It's 12 midnight here. So.
Oh my God. I still love your energy.
But I love you guys so much, so thank you so much.
Right.
And I believe in you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, guys.
Right.
I will see you guys next week.